So different parts of our project are at different levels of engineering. So the mining would be at feasibility. The processing would be at feasibility. But the infrastructure is probably pre-feasibility level. In fact, when we were using the southern route with the ferry, I'd say that was probably scoping level. We had not gone out and gotten detailed engineering studies done on building the ferry, costing the ferry, and those kinds of things. And part of it was, why do a feasibility study on 3 different alternatives when only one gets selected at the end of the day? So as it turned out, we had three different infrastructure corridors, and we thought that the ferry route would be most acceptable because it was the least environmentally impactful. It had the smallest, what's called wetlands footprint, but it and the western route had the least amount of engineering on both of them, scoping level, whereas the northern route had pre-feasibility level engineering. And at the 11th hour, the federal agencies asked us to change from the ferry route to the northern corridor. They preferred a larger wetlands footprint and no ferry lake. Yeah, it's okay. We like the northern corridor better because it allows us to have a concentrate pipeline opposed to the materials handling of trucking to the lake, unloading onto the ferry, unloading across the lake, putting it on trucks, and then taking it down to the port.
So when the project was originally being considered, 10 years ago, the idea was that there would be a northern transportation corridor. And that's where all the investment occurred in terms of engineering work. At some point, we considered it might be a railroad, at some point a road, at some point it would have a slurry pipeline to take the concentrate. Different options were considered, but almost always the northern route. When I came in, my assignment from Ron was to kind of reconsider the project and design something that we thought could get through the permitting process without as much controversy as the original project had engendered. So we did lots of things to the project. We made it smaller, we took out cyanide, we redesigned tailings facilities, all kinds of things. But one of the things we looked at was the transportation corridor. And the Clean Water Act focuses on the number of acres of what's called wetlands that you impact. And by going across the lake, we didn't have a road that went across rivers and streams, okay? And so it didn't impact as many wetlands. 40% fewer wetlands were impacted if we went across the lake with a ferry than if we did the road. So Ron and I had this discussion because from a mining perspective, the road actually had some advantages. But from an environmental perspective, it looked as though the ferry made more sense. So Ron and I had a discussion as we were submitting our application. I said, Ron, the thing that could be best for us is if we submit the ferry route, but the Corps of Engineers, after they do their study, tells us that they've selected as an alternative the northern road route. And that's what happened here, is that the way the process works in America is you submit what you prefer to build. It's called your preferred alternative. And then the Corps identifies a number of other options. Okay, so there were some other transportation corridor options for our project, in addition to the 2 that we're now talking about. But after they did all the review, they decided that they preferred the northern route because we didn't have to use an ice-breaking ferry on the lake, and because we didn't come as close to a bear preserve on the southern part of the road by going north. And so they kind of threw us under the bus to the alternative that actually made more sense to us from a mining perspective. And so now we're going to be building a northern corridor. We'll have a slurry pipeline as part of it. So the concentrate will go down to the coast by pipeline. And it makes a lot of things easier. It makes expansion much easier. It makes the construction much easier. Just a bunch of things become easier. So while this was not something we sought, this was forced on us by the Corps of Engineers, it's actually worked out to our benefit.
And when you say it is easier for the expansion, you mean post 20 years or?
Yes, post 20 years. Because we don't have to, we just send more stuff through the pipeline. We don't have more trucks. We don't have, just more pipeline. So it's perfect for that. It's actually perfect. Let's put a little history on right-of-way for a second. It is not unusual at all to get your record of decision and not have right-of-way agreements. It's all the time. All the time. For us, we got a little bit of a dilemma, okay? So it's going to cost us more to get it quicker. We'd like to have it quicker because it answers questions that folks like you ask. On the other hand, we don't need it for another 3 years. We got to go through state permitting for the road until after that. So the longer we wait, the better the deal we get. All right, and so I'm here doing this on a daily basis. Do I want to pay a little more and get this done more quickly? Do I want to drag this out and get a better deal? And that's where we are. It's like if you owned a piece of land out there near our project, I've got to build a road across it. So I'm coming out there and I've got two options. I can buy your land, or I can purchase from you a right-of-way to build the road and use the road only. Some of them we're buying the land. Some of them we're just getting a right-of-way. Either one works for us.
Maybe we can go around you. That's another one. I mean, that's not always the case, but sometimes you can go around the landowner, and it becomes, well, do I want this over my land or not? Because there's no other use for this land.
Yeah, but here's a point that they really haven't focused on yet. Ron mentioned the term "go around." So they had a small allotment. BB&C owned a small allotment that the original proposal would have required that we put a road across. The final proposal, however, we went around it. Yeah, I don't think they focused on that yet, and I don't want to tell them publicly that we don't have to cross their land. We have to. So it doesn't matter what BB&C says.
Why don't you want to tell them?
Because then I'm fearful that they'll try to stop us some other way. Now they think they've stopped us because we can't cross their land. I'm happy for them to continue to think that. Okay. The fact that we proposed the ferry route and they forced us to choose the northern corridor route is proof that they took a hard look at the issue. So it actually helps us. It doesn't hurt us. In addition, the fact that they are requiring a significant amount of mitigation proves that they've taken a hard look at the mitigation issue. So these things that have been somewhat problematic for us to deal with as we've gone through this process actually help us enormously when we get into litigation.
Okay. So you mean that actually it's almost like it's good. It's almost good that...
It is very good for us to have proposed one thing and for the Corps to have told us to do something else. That shows that we didn't go in there and just get what we wanted. They took a hard look at everything and made us do some other things. Yes. Very good.
And you said last time that I think Ron said that you guys had foreseen that. You proposed the southern route on purpose. Was it?
No, what I said was that I being a mining guy always liked the northern corridor, and I had problems with the ferry route because there was much more material handling. But Tom wanted the ferry route because it had a lesser wetlands footprint, and he thought that would appeal to the EPA and the Department of Interior. But Tom did say, wouldn't it be ironic if at the end of the day they pushed us back to the northern corridor? I mean, and then, Ron, you get what you want, and I'm not really getting what I want. And that's actually what happened.
From the perspective of litigation, the northern corridor choice and the mitigation decision are very helpful to us. Those are not negatives. Those are real positives.
Mitigation is we have to do a lot more work than we'd originally expected.
Yeah.
So that obviously means they're holding our feet to the fire.
Okay. And all that's going to be proof of the integrity of the process later on. And so that's all part of the strategy.
Yes.
So you knew, Tom, where the wind was coming from.
No, sometimes you get lucky. But, and this, while it's nice that Ron gets his northern corridor, we put a lot of time and effort into the ferry route. I think we would have all preferred that had been the way this worked out, but it didn't. But it's not a downside to us. From the perspective of long-term future expansion of the mine, the northern corridor is best. The fact that they've made us take the northern corridor will be very helpful to us as we go through litigation. So, win.
And I think the northern corridor, most of the mining people will like it because we get to ship the concentrate in a pipeline. I mean, far less material handling, and whereas the ferry required containers of concentrate, and so you truck them to the ferry port, take them off the truck, you put them on the ferry, you go across the lake, you take them off the ferry, you put them on a truck, you take them to the coastal port, you take them off the truck and you put them on a barge. It just there's a lot more handling.
I hear you. And was this a surprise for you that they chose that, or were you you knew that they would?
It was a surprise.
Yeah, it was clearly a surprise. Yeah, it was a surprise.